Hi there. We are here for the latest edition of SO Live. It's me, Danny Flexen, and fresh, if that is indeed the right word, from Poland, Mr. Ayman Khan. Ayman has the jet lag, mate.
Danny, I'm tired. I'm tired of all the controversy, the debate. We're going to settle it here today. And the biggest debate of all is, does Danny's fresh trim look good? I've spotted
Come
it. I've
on.
seen it. I can see the fresh trim. Do we like it? Do we not like it? What's the word?
The Fresh Prince of Rochester checking in. It's definitely more grey. It's definitely more salt and pepper. I don't think there's any question about that anymore. But yeah, it's the freshest thing about me is probably the trim at the moment, although I haven't got the excuse of just flying in from Poland. What an incredible atmosphere, first of all. Before we get into the big debate, and I know people want to get their views heard, and please do like, comment, subscribe with emphasis on the comments because we will be reading as many of those out as we can, and we'll get to your first chats in a minute. But yeah, what was the atmosphere like out in Poland in, how do you pronounce it? Wrocław? Something like that.
I've been pronouncing it as Wrocław. I'm reliably informed by my good friend Emily that it's called Wrocław. So I've been saying it as Wrocław the whole week. But any and all pronunciations of the area are accepted here at Seconds Out. Look, from reverse a couple of nights back and to the start of the fight week, Wrocław seemed like a bit of a quiet city, quiet area, town, whatever it is. Geography never my strong point, but it started to kind of mill forward as the fight week activities proceeded with the weigh-in. The weigh-in was very much well represented by fans, Usyk fans, of course, specifically. Although we did run into quite a few people who came here for Daniel Dubois, there was a British contingent that did come out. And I believe there is actually a Polish. There's a English base in Poland where a sergeant had said that they were going to take the soldiers over to watch the fight. Actually, so there was a couple of spits and bursts of English fans going there to see Dubois, but the atmosphere was incredible. Look, when you go there, when you're at the actual stadium, wow, it's just this big like arena bowl. It kind of reminded me of what the Saudis had built for the purpose stadiums for their fights over for the boxing. It reminded me of that. But then when you went in, it was just something else. Lights, glitz, just a real kind of. It's so hard to describe, but there was an electricity kind of in the air, really, and a real kind of apprehension and waiting for the Ukrainian people and the Polish people in arms with the Ukrainian people to see their hero Oleksandr Usyk. Even Mitrofanov, for example, someone like Dmitry Mitrofanov, we don't know him as any big kind of star here at all, but they were greeted with like they were, a Hollywood star in the arena or in the streets as well. So it's a real incredible atmosphere, a real brilliant occasion on a wider sense too, and one that I'll remember for a very, very long time.
Neat little way of words there. We've got a poll up at the moment in the chat. Simply put, did Daniel Dubois hit Usyk low or no? And obviously we're referring to that pivotal shot or almost pivotal shot in the 5th round. I'm going to go through some of your comments now before we get into it with Ayman, who was, of course, had a ringside seat. Let's have a look what we got here. This is more about Fury and Usyk. Usyk beat... You can't call him a din low. That's not very nice. Fair and square. It was a low blow. That's Georgie boy. Charlie Roberts says, who can tell me where Dubois punched Usyk is a legal part of the body to be punched or not? If so, it's taking something away from boxing. Alex says, Dubois fans are crybabies. It's a bit harsh. A bit more about Fury, but we're getting on to Fury later, I imagine. Georgie, no, not Georgie boy again. Jay speaks his mind. Close, but no low blow. I discussed this on my channel. Nice plug there, Jay. Be your last one, unfortunately, but well done. Pay Styles says 2 quitters on the night. One has balls size of a cantaloupe, perhaps. Now, just like geography's never been Ayman's strong point, animal anatomy has never been mine. So I'm not sure about the size of a cantaloupe's nether regions. Saudi money is room. No, it's not really anything. Jose Sisioma says most of these dudes back in Dubois are quitters in their own life. Yeah, I'm not sure that's particularly fair. Usyk's Achilles belly has been exposed, says Perry. Quite like that. Thunder Road says Danny is looking good. The lasses are definitely swiping right in Rochester. I'm assuming that's a typo. and not, a parallel universe to Rochester. Thanks, Thunder Road. I don't remember you being quite so nice to me last week, so I'll take that for what it is. I'll take it at face value. Nick Carter, presumably not the boy band star, says it was on the belly button. Is that allowed or not? Yes, Nick, it is. But whether it was on the belly button or not is open to debate. A debate we're going to have in a minute. Sergei Liakovic, I don't know if it's the real Sergei Liakovic, former world heavyweight champion in his own right. I hope it is. Says shot was low, no argument. It also wasn't the only one Dubois landed, so he's fortunate not to have had points off. Dubois should have been stopped in his last fight, but got lucky. It's funny you should mention that because Kevin Lorena actually responded to some comments on Frank Warren's Instagram page, saying, now you know how I felt, basically, which I thought was quite funny. Simon Brandy says lots of misleading still images. Video footage looked legit. Endgame says you can't debate that the reaction was immediate, but an actual body shot will have a delayed effect, which is fair enough. I don't know if that's always the case, though. Nick Carter again. Obviously, boy band work's dried up these days. Says it was on the button. And Super Sprinter 156, I really feel this one, says fanboy word of the week, naval. Although it's naval with an E, I believe, isn't it? Rather than an A, unless we're talking about, people going to fight on boats. But yeah, we'll come back to some more of your chats shortly. But Ayman, you were there. And obviously, we've seen so many images of it since, both still and video. What was your immediate reaction when you saw a shot land and Usyk hit the deck?
You said it was going to be Jay Speaks His Mind's last plug. I'll give him another one. Jay Speaks His Mind, whether this is Ayman Speaks His Mind or Aim Speaks His Mind. Look, my immediate reaction was, so where we were placed, we were ringside. We were a chock-a-block ringside, by the way. So many people, never seen so many people are surrounding the area. And we were in the, right by the post. If you imagine the post where Don Charles's team were, that corner. So we had I personally had a little bit of an obstructed view of the action. So my eyes were flittering because I like to watch when I'm there live. I see a lot of people, if there's a screen available, watching the screen. And I'm thinking, I can watch a screen anytime. I want to watch it with my own eyes. So I try and watch it even if it's obstructed with my own eyes. But I had to flitter. Sometimes I had to flitter because of that obstruction. So saying that, when I did see the punch with my own eyes. And when I first saw it, I thought, that's a legal blow. And then the replays that came up in the after the round, they showed the one angle, and I thought, that's a legal blow. He's hit him right on the belt line. And then another replay showed the same angle, which again, I thought was a legal blow. So my thought process right there immediately, and then of people around ringside as well, was that was a legal punch and that the punch landed and Oleksandr Usyk should have received a count. Then more replays kept coming and people around ringside were even I'm not talking just British people here or British media. I believe Talk Sport was saying as well that it was a legal punch. I obviously can't hear the commentary from TNT Sports, but I believe they were also claiming it was a legal punch too. But my legitimate initial first reaction was that it was a legal blow and Daniel Dubois should have at least a knockdown on Oleksandr Usyk in that fight.
I'll give my take shortly, but let's go to some more comments. Bobby B says Usyk always complains on any body shot, Jelly Belly himself. I think that's harsh, but I also do think Usyk was making the referee very aware of the body shots or low shots, depending on your perspective, from early in the fight. He was showing out, and then that led to the referee complaining. And we will talk about the referee, because whether you think that was a legal blow in the 5th round or not, I don't think the referee covered himself in glory. What else we got here? Jose, we've seen yours already. Sergei Liakovic again says, second time now Dubois has capitulated after a jab. Is Dubois still not comfortable fighting gassed later rounds? Should you have to at least go 12 rounds before challenging for a title? Yeah, that's an interesting point. Pay Style says, everyone asks why these larger boxers don't rush forward on Usyk. The answer has to be more pop on his punches than given credit for. I think that's certainly true. And also, I think it's the speed of reaction. So, you're liable to get countered quickly. And he's got faster hands than the majority of heavyweights because he's come up from cruiserweight and he's an excellent boxer. Anita Dump says, that's like straight out Simpsons, isn't it? Yeah. Huge ass. Why did the referee not give a count? If he gave the count and was counted out, he was beat. It was because of where it was, and Usyk was in hometown. He wasn't in his hometown. He was actually 300 miles from the Ukrainian border in Poland. But I understand what you're saying. He was certainly the house fighter. Knocked out from, that's more Dubois slander. Ezekiel the Mac says, if Usyk was hit below the belt, why did he not grab his groin whilst writhing around in agony? I'm not sure that always happens. Like, I've been hit low in sparring. I've been hit with a football, playing football in that region as well. You know, you don't always, instinctively grab there. Sometimes you sink to your knees in abject pain. So I don't think that's necessarily, definitive proof. But going back to the overriding point in that 5th round, I initially thought definitely a fair knockdown. Seemed to be completely on or just above the belt line for me. I think one of the problems we've got is that I think Tony Bellew did it first, circulating that picture of Usyk post-fight with his trunks very much below his navel. There's that word again. And that wasn't the case for the majority of the fight itself, and certainly not when he took that shot in the 5th round. His trunks were covering his belly button at that point. But unless you've got X-ray specs, there's no way of knowing how high the trunks were in relation to his belly button. Therefore, there's no way definitively of knowing where the shot landed. I don't want to say that makes this whole debate pointless and, 160 people, 171 now are watching live, suddenly switch off. But the problem is that it's a bit like politics at the moment. Everyone's on one side or the other. It's a binary debate. Everyone who thinks that Dubois was cheated seems absolutely certain in their view. And everyone I've seen online who thinks Usyk did have a low blow and came back manfully to win the fight is equally determined that their view is correct. I don't see how anyone can be 100% certain where that shot landed except for Usyk himself. And then it becomes, as Billy Joel once sang, a matter of trust. So it's a difficult one. Alex says, ignore the photos going around, watch the fight and pause it throughout, and you can see Usyk's belly button. Anything below the belly button is illegal. Also, let's talk about the wet canvas. Well, there's not much really to talk about the wet canvas, but we can. Blaze1871 says, Bellew doing damage limitation so the super fight happens. I saw Peter Fury use the same picture as well, and I've got a huge amount of respect for Peter Fury. And he may well be right about where the shot landed. I just don't think that picture in particular supported that view. Simon Brandy says, middle of the hips is the cutoff. Watching the replay, the shot looked bang on. We see those body shots in boxing all the time. See, someone said earlier that navel was the the fanboy word of the week. I think bladder has to be up there or down there, as the case may be. A lot of people talking about he was hit in the bladder and that's why he reacted the way he did, because you don't have to be hit squarely in the nuts to be in terrible pain. I had a look because I kind of think I like to know where my bladder is anyway. But I did have a look at some diagrams online. Never hurts to learn, even at 42. And the bladder is just above the private region, going all PG there. And looking at the angle of the shot and where it made contact, I don't think he was hitting the bladder. That doesn't mean it was a legal shot. I'm not saying it was on the belly button or above, but it certainly wasn't the bladder from my view. Basel Amjad says the main impact of the shot was at the belt line, but his fist first grazed, landed from below the belt line, then slid upwards. And for a heavyweight, that would hurt. And yes, I've seen Usyk's belly button. Well, I think we've all seen Usyk's belly button now, probably more than we'd like. Bobby B says he should wear his guard in the proper place. We don't know definitively where he's wearing the guard. We only know where his shorts were, and they seem to move around quite a lot during the fight. Wally Chinchilla says this will continue happening to Usyk. I know there's been some video going around of Maris Breedis doing something similar to Dubois. We'll talk about the end of the fight shortly and the fight as a whole, but I just wanted to go with the main thrust of the debate to start with, pun intended. Thomas Morris says the shot was placed perfectly, but once we watched Dubois give up in the ninth, to me, he can't even complain about the bad call. Yeah, I mean, if you're a cynic, you could say, well, it gives the promoters and Dubois himself and his training team a narrative now to ask for a rematch, to keep him up there in the list of contenders, and I understand that. But it could be a legitimate thing. Like, if you feel that punch landed where it did, although Usyk told Ayman yesterday that he would have jumped up if he'd heard the referee counting, we'll never know for sure. And I think that unknown element is what could sell a rematch, or Dubois getting another shot against another champion. Taj says Usyk's navel was not visible before the shot landed. He adjusted it after the ref gave him time to recover. Blaze 1871 says, should we use VR? Oh, he means VAR. I'd love a bit of VR refereeing. VAR like football in boxing. So I'm going to come back to some chats in a minute, so don't stop sending them in. But I want to get back to Ayman, who was actually there, let's not forget, in Roslov. Ayman, we saw what happened. If we say, and this is hypothetical, that it was a legal blow that Dubois landed, is there a chance that Usyk was, he thought it was a low blow if it wasn't? Can the pains be conflated between a legitimate body shot and a shot below the belt?
I don't know. It's always very hard to kind of really project or understand where someone, like you kind of mentioned, like where someone feels the pain. Really, I've had pain before where you think it's in a certain place, but really it's actually somewhere else in your body. You don't really. It's a very hard kind of question to answer specifically. But what I can say is, like, Usyk I saw a different angle actually when I spoke to Usyk. And Usyk showed me on his phone and pulled it out, and there was, I believe, a gentleman. I haven't sourced the actual video yet, but the video was another angle, and he was talking through it. And on that angle, first time I'd seen it from Usyk, it looked clearly low. Now, not even like, because it's the point of impact is really kind of the crux of the situation, not really maybe where the punch ended, I guess. And from what it looked like, from what Usyk provided to me, it was clearly even a lot lower than it being just the belt line. It looked like a proper bad low blow. I'd like to kind of source that video again. I believe we've got it, the actual kind of recording of it at some point. So I need to look at that back. But for me, like, having seen that angle and see the way my mind works is, I think if an angle shows that it's and clearly illegal, then that is the angle to go with, because otherwise it wouldn't exist if it was clearly illegal. I think as well there's some confusion too regarding kind of the rules. We did a little bit of research, the team at SecondsOut, and essentially what it was, there's a discrepancy between British rules and then other rules. So for example, if this happened hypothetically in Britain, then I should say, if this happened hypothetically in Britain at the one angle that's been thrown out or seen by the wider majority of people, then it's a legal punch. If it happens in America, it's illegal. Below the navel, illegal. UK, legal. That's kind of the confusion. And when you were kind of saying as well about the debate as well too, noticing on the comments in our videos, the people who want to go piling on Usyk on Usyk's video, and the people who want to pile on Don Charles and say that he doesn't have a claim, piling on Don. There's no real support for either camp on the videos either. So yeah, the debate's going to rumble on. Like you mentioned there, cause for Daniel Dubois specifically, a young heavyweight, to kind of cling on to something there. Whether a rematch happens is difficult, because Frank Warren's also pushing for Tyson Fury for an undisputed fight. So how does that really kind of fit into the puzzle? But yeah, a real kind of messy kind of situation. But one that, again, when there's debate like this, when there's uncertainty, maybe people do want to see the fight again.
Comments, and then Ayman and I will give our final verdicts, metaphorical gun to our heads. Chats here are going so fast it's hard to keep up, but we'll see. Scouser 0151 says Daniel is not weak. He dropped Usyk for 5 minutes. Come on now. I mean, it depends where it landed in a sense, doesn't it? Big Dog 100 says it's on the belt. It should be higher to stop the debate. Otherwise, let's talk about it. Yeah, that's fair enough. Blaze 1871 says Usyk laid down for a round and a half recovery. Anyone can come back after that time. Who else we got here? I wasn't a G until I moved out the hood, says Usyk is clever how he got these much bigger knockout ice on the back foot. It's mind-boggling. Sunset, if they felt so strongly about it being a body shot, why didn't they protest at the time? I mean, there's not really much you can do when the fight is still going on. The referee's, it's like protesting a red card in a football match. The referee's not going to suddenly change his mind and let you stay on the pitch.
What really is that point there?
Yeah. Goran Stipchich says, Dubois is a quitter and spoilt brat. He hit Usyk not just with that shot. There is at least 4 or 5 low shots more. Just watch again. I think some of those were debatable, though. Dan Raphael has apparently said Don Charles should worry more about Dubois being a quitter, which is interesting. Not always see eye to eye with Dan. Dennis Baktov, again, I hope it's the real one, says, considering Dubois is one of Usyk's weakest opponents. Sorry, the chat's going a bit fast from here. Is one of his weakest opponents. How concerning is it Usyk looked visibly slower? First time I've seen him looking his age and inactivity not helping. I mean, we're going to move on to the overall fight in a minute, and I didn't think Usyk was particularly impressive, to be honest. So we'll talk about that. Bobby B says, this ref made him take 1 more minute. BS this. Yeah, I mean, the referee should never be in a position, and Don Charles mentioned this to Ayman yesterday, where he's actively encouraging the fighter to take more time. A fighter's allowed up to a certain amount of time, and then it's up to them when they want to carry on up until that limit. The referee should never be kind of a cheerleader or an encourager for a fighter to go before he's ready, or if he says he's ready, to give him more time. If the fighter's sure he's made the right decision, let him carry on. I thought the referee was very responsive to Usyk and his demands, complaints during the fight, and whether the punch was low or not in the 5th, and the poll at the moment is very close. I think, the referee was at fault either way. So just before we move on to the overall fight, Ayman, I'm going to ask you first, and then I'll give mine. If you had to say right now definitively, was it low or was it no?
I'm going to slightly tweak the question, or slightly tweak my answer to your question, and say I can't fully say definitively just yet. A lot of lag in terms of my mind and brain, and in terms of the angles that I've seen too. I've seen one angle. I saw with my own eyes what I thought looked legit. I saw on a replay what I thought looked legit. Then I saw a second angle, which I thought looked completely low. So right now, where I stand, having stood on saying it was legal, or thinking it was legal, to then thinking it is illegal, currently at the moment I sit here saying I think the punch was illegal, but say it definitively, I'm not sure, because I don't think it's cut and shut yet, because I want to, 1, watch the fight again, 2, find those clips as well, and then make my mind up. But right now, as I sit here, I think that the punch was illegal.
And as said, Kosabutsky and F.A. Jagba were obviously inspired by this fight. There was some real ball busting going on in that one. Yeah, I mean, I saw some clips of that the next day, and if you want to see a real inarguable nut shot, look at Kosabutsky against F.A. Jagba, and the way Kosabutsky shrugs his shoulders when he gets disqualified as well, because he knew just what a destructive shot well below the belt he just landed. I think on balance of probabilities, from the angles I've seen, from the original video, the reaction and everything else, I would err towards the side of it being a legal blow. A body shot right on the belt line, not below. But I'd be open to being convinced by, new angles, new video angles and so on. But if I had to pick right now, that's what I would go for. But I said earlier, I didn't think Usyk's performance was brilliant. I thought he looked a bit podgy. Easy for me to say at 17 stone, but thought he looked a bit chubby at the weigh-in. And then he just seemed a bit lethargic in the performance itself. And we can give some credit to Dubois. We'll talk about him as well. But I just thought Usyk was a bit lackluster, a bit one-paced compared to how he usually is. This wasn't a masterclass in the realm of maybe the first Joshua fight or even the Tony Bellew fight, where, yes, he lost a few early rounds, but always seemed to know what he was doing and gradually went through the gears. I think when Dubois wasn't found to be the winner after that 5th round, he gradually fell apart as much as Usyk gradually went up and accelerated the pace. I think Dubois gave a good account of himself. I didn't think it was amazing. I thought, to compare and contrast, I would say it's quite similar to Anthony Yarde against Artur Beterbiev recently, in that he was in the fight, he had some good moments, but he didn't win too many rounds. And it always seemed like you would favour the favourite, Beterbiev, in this case Usyk, to come through and win, apart from that pivotal moment almost in the 5th round. Ayman, what did you make of both fighters' performances and the fight as a whole?
No, I quite like that comparison. Actually, it's a pretty apropos comparison fight-wise. If you're comparing the two of them, you can brush off the dirt from your shoulder. Fight-wise, I thought, sticking on Oleksandr Usyk, a nice little human moment from him afterwards in the press conference, where someone asked him if he was nervous for that fight, and he goes, "You know what? a little bit. I was nervous, and you can understand why there would be some nerves, and if some nerves would affect his performance for someone who has been a road warrior for the majority of his career, going on the road to claim wins, titles, whatever it is, to now have this homecoming, which means a lot for himself and the Ukrainian people, and the symbol that he is to them, a hero to those people. He's got to now make sure he performs in front of them all. So to carry that weight on his shoulders against, say what you want about Dubois and where you think he is and where you think he might get to, Dubois does carry a threat in the ring, and he has to deal with that properly and deliver to his people. So I can understand why his performance might not have been as stellar as people might thought it would be. Again, given his opponent too, the shortcomings of his opponent as well. It was quite interesting speaking to Don as well. Don was adamant that Usyk maybe only started his camp 7 weeks ago. Maybe didn't have a full camp for whatever reason. And there were stills and images of Usyk looking quite thin, or at least not as big as he did look on fight night. Maybe that was part of it. Maybe for whatever reason it was, they did start the camp late, and that might have played a factor. But I thought for a large part, I still think Usyk in that fight, and never really, aside from that controversial moment, looked in any real trouble. He did have like a bit of a mouse under his left eye in the fight, but apart from that, in other fights we've seen where he's had losses recently, he's had quite big cuts and bruises and things. So no, I thought Usyk was pretty good in the ring there. Just a point on the ring itself. When we were there, it was obviously very hot throughout the whole week, and then there was a storm that happened, and that it sort of kind of like mixed up together, and there was like a fog that went over the ring, looking like a bit like the music video to Thriller, kind of covering the ring as well too. So a wet ring potentially. But no one slipped, no one really fell, no one really complained about the wet ring, so I don't really think that played a factor at all. Coming on to Daniel Dubois, I thought Daniel did well. I thought Daniel did. Don Charles working with Dan, I thought he performed pretty good. I was quite happy to see Dan kind of trying to mix things up, trying to put out the jab there, not really fazed by too much in terms of the expectation on him as well too. I thought he used quite a bit of head movement. I thought he missed an opportunity, let's be honest, regarding this low blow or not low blow. Regardless of whether it was a low blow or not, the guy was hurt. I don't think he was milking it. I think the guy was hurt, and there was an opportunity there to jump on Oleksandr Usyk and try and do something there. And I think Daniel, that was the moment really. There was an opportunity there, and it just kind of went by. The momentum kind of went out of the ring, or out of Daniel's mind, having had to wait for so long. So I think that they'll reflect on as being as somewhere where what could have been. The other point as well is Daniel's kind of had the finger pointed at him to say that he's a quitter in the ring or doesn't have the bottle when the going gets tough. And I'm not one of these people. I can't find it in me to point the finger at a fight and say, you quit, you jacked it in the ring, because it's just not in my nature. And the other thing is I can't get my head around as well too is you want to call someone a quitter like Daniel, but the injury that happened in that fight with Joyce happened in round 2, and he fought on until how many rounds until the fight eventually ended. Is that someone who's a quitter? Is that someone who doesn't have heart or a degree of heart? For me, no, that is someone that does have a degree of heart. And then against Lorena as well, where there's an injury and he fought on with that injury, he does have a degree of heart and a degree of fight in him. So yeah, look, I don't see that as being something that I'd label him as. And just finally on his performance, we bumped into Derek Chisora. We bumped into Derek Chisora in the fight week, and he asked us our opinion. And I said to him, look, he's just got to hit arms and legs and such and such. And Derek's just like, it's not easy trying to hit Usyk. 1 minute he's there, 1 minute he's not. And I said to him, Derek, can Daniel do what you did? And Derek goes, no, not many heavyweights can do what I do, because in the preparation that I had, I put down 20 grand and said, whoever can knock me out can get that 20 grand. And he had the best performance or best success at heavyweight when it comes to a Brit or in general a heavyweight against Oleksandr Usyk. Maybe you need that mentality, that mindset to kind of come in against Usyk and really kind of throw it to the wall like Chisora attempted to. Did Daniel really throw everything at the wall? I don't quite think so. So maybe a missed opportunity for him.
And Thunder Road's out here encouraging people to give us a thumbs up on the live, which we really appreciate, and we would echo that sentiment. I'm loving this babyface turn from Thunder Road. I hope it lasts for a while. Yeah, Simon Brandy says, I don't think Daniel was that hurt. He was knackered. It's an interesting one because I think there's a lot of positives to take from the fight for Dubois and his team in that he did well early on. He matched Usyk as much as he could. His mobility was good. His punch selection was better than I've seen it in the past. He didn't look out of place, although, as I said earlier, he wasn't winning too many rounds. But the way in which he capitulated after round 5, it was, a slow kind of breaking down process. And then suddenly he seemed to fall apart in the conclusive round. And I think he was tired. I think that was part of it. But I think when you take a flurry and most of them graze you rather than land flush and you're going down on a knee, that speaks more to being under pressure and not being able to handle that pressure, not knowing what to do, not knowing a way out rather than, being forced to the canvas because you're in pain or because you've been hit with the force of the blow. And then obviously the finishing shot was a jab, as has been pointed out by a few people already. And again, that speaks more to tiredness and to perhaps mentally, I don't want to say giving up, but mentally accepting that you're beaten, knowing that the fight's going a way in which you don't want it to, and not having the wherewithal or the determination or both to turn it around and get it back in your favor. So, yeah, it's a difficult one. Matthews Masternak, I'm pretty sure that's not going to be the real one either, says, is Dubois still too top-heavy? His form was terrible. By the end, could barely move his arms. Yeah, I think there might be some sense to that as well. Obviously muscles use a lot more oxygen, so maybe there is some essence in that. But he didn't look like he'd gone hell for leather, and we mentioned Chisora just there. He didn't look like he'd gone, he'd emptied the tank, to allude back to Anthony Yard as well, before the fight ended. I think there was probably an element of deflation after thinking he might have won the fight and then quickly realising he hadn't in the 5th round. But I think he just seemed to, I don't want to say lose heart because I think that's insulting and I'm also not sure it's true. But I think there was an issue there where he was under pressure, but the fight did not appear lost at that point. But perhaps in his mind it was. What did you think, Ayman, of the way in which the fight ended?
So this is where, again, the view that I had was obstructed, and I've not watched the fight back again, and I didn't see the actual punch that ended the fight apart from on the replay. So a little bit of a blur for myself. I don't know. What springs out to me is from the first round, Daniel Dubois took in like a real deep breath, and he looked real tired from the first. So I was kind of thinking, like, would the occasion kind of get to him? And I thought, that burn up of energy. And I thought maybe, but he's had that experience against Lorena where I think in the aftermath of the fight, it was said that Daniel kind of got shook by the stadium, all the people, and that occasion. So that experience going into that one might lend help to this one. Maybe it didn't. Maybe that played a factor into just in terms of the point about Daniel Dubois being top heavy. Daniel was training at high altitude in Granada. I think like that was about as good a form as Daniel in his form we could have seen, especially with no injuries rearing. A lot of talk about an injury coming into this fight and whether he was going to take the fight and whether that would hamper him. No real talk of any injury, no real sight of any injury either on a wet canvas where you could slip and you could do another injury to your knee. No real form of that. So I thought, I thought Daniel did as well as he could. I can't point the finger and say he jacked it or whatever. Again, I probably need to watch it again and have a form my opinion on that. But look, maybe there's the claim to say that he maybe thought he felt defeated and didn't think there was a way for him to win. But again, short sharp shot. Was it a short sharp shot, jab or a right hand that caused the ending? Then maybe that just rocked him far more than what we could actually see for our own eye.
Only Dubois knows for sure. It's just obviously coming off what happened against Lorena and previous to that against Joyce. There's going to be a chatter about him and not all of it positive. But I think there's plenty of positives to take from his performance as well. A lot of people in the chat already started to talk about Fury and the potential Usyk-Fury fight, which leads me to ask, I mean, we've kind of covered what will be next for Dubois, maybe not in terms of which fight, but how he can build from here. It'll be interesting, I think, in the Dubois case, if he stays with Don Charles. I don't think Don did anything wrong in camp or on fight night itself to suggest they'll split, but Dubois has had so many trainers already as a pro, moved around a lot as an amateur in the gyms as well. It wouldn't surprise me if he then moved yet again, but we'll have to see what happens. But for Usyk, I think Kala Sauerland broke a world record in getting his tweet up almost immediately after the fight was ruled off with Dubois, saying we're next with a picture of Hrgović. And he is next on the mandatory order for the IBF, Hrgović, after 2 lackluster performances in a row, but he has earned his spot, unless you feel he shouldn't have got the verdict against Zhilei Zhang, but that's an argument perhaps for another day. What do we think Usyk's going to do next? Is it Hrgović? Is there any chance that it could be Fury? It looks further away than ever.
Definitely is a chance. And from my point of view, and I think a lot of fans' point of view, the only fight we want to see is Tyson Fury. We only want to see the undisputed fight. And I think Igis kind of said the one that they're looking to go for is the undisputed heavyweight fight. And then Hrgović is the second option because obviously they have to defend the belt because of the position he's in. We've seen the back and forth for a while. This is the trajectory that both fighters are on, and they should be heading towards that undisputed fight. But quite ironically, the only thing that's separated them is the talks, and visually is ring ropes. We saw Tyson Fury call on Oleksandr Usyk after his fight with Dylan White in Wembley. I believe it was that fight, and Usyk was present, and he called on the fight, but we've not seen the fight. There's all this kind of back and forth, splits and money, and this. I remember speaking to Russ Amber and said, if you want the fight, the fight will happen. It will get made. Why isn't it getting made? And that's the thing that's been pointed at both camps, and it's frustrating to not really know why we haven't seen it, why we haven't got it. Fury's got to go through his fight with exhibition, whatever it is, against Francis Ngannou, and then the lay of the land is whatever the lay of the land is. I'll just quickly say this. I tend to believe that the Hrgović fight will probably be next. But who's going to put up the money for the fight? Where would it happen? What's the interest for it? Am I being British and saying here that there's not a lot of interest in it? There's the same level of interest as Daniel Dubois in a world sense? I don't know.
Well, no one's gonna fault you for being too British. I think that's okay. We're patriotic here at Seconds Out. But yeah, G-Man says Dubois should have went all out after he knocked Usyk down. Let's not forget that the rest was almost 4 minutes long, so Dubois got a breather too. But I don't think he has the mental fortitude. Thunder Road says Wilder can't even agree to fight Ruiz, and both with PBC. Wilder freezes himself out. Only fought Fury of note. Bit harsh on Luis Ortiz, perhaps. I wasn't a G until... I'm not going to read your whole handle. Daniel will hold a belt going on, but not with Don Charles in his corner. Maybe a little harsh there, seeing as that was one of Daniel's best performances as a pro. On the belt, longer is a good shot. That's the rule in boxing. Not sure. That's obviously a bit of predictive text gone wrong there. So getting back to what we were talking about, I think Fury and Ngannou, exhibition or real fight, either way, I think there's only one winner there, and it's not Francis Ngannou, and I've got all the respect in the world for him as a man and as a UFC fighter. I still need to catch up watching Tyson Fury's show on Netflix. Everyone tells me it's brilliant. But you're in it.
Two people say to me,
Fury, Ayman Fury.
They said, I can see the back of your head and you asking a question. I'm like, yes, get it.
Oh, get in, mate. Well done. Long lost Fury cut. What was the question? Do you know?
I've not seen it myself yet.
I wonder if he responded with Dossard. That seems to be typical, but we'll have to wait and see. I've got another reason to catch up on it now. The Art of Fighting says Usyk had to give AJ a rematch, then make a mandatory against Dubois. No doubt it will be another mandatory next. I mean, that's the thing. If you hold 3 of the major 4 world heavyweight titles, you have got to fight your mandatories. And if Usyk's making decent money, generally fighting at or near home, obviously not at home for obvious reasons at the moment, against fighters he feels he can beat, and he'll be a big favourite against Hrgović, then fair play to him. Sunset says, Oleksandr Usyk's team have told Sky Sports that Daniel Dubois has a 0% chance of successfully appealing it as a result of his knockout loss. I texted someone earlier in Frank Warren's team and said, if this was a WBO title fight purely rather than a WBA mandatory, then he probably would have been ordered by now to rematch. Tongue in cheek, of course, for people that talk about Frank Warren's relationship with WBO. I'm sure he won't mind. JM84 says, imagine a nice stroll in the countryside and then you come across a caravan owned by the Furies. Well, you might not know it was owned by the Furies unless Big John comes out and decides to make your acquaintance, in which case I would advise you to run. Fury versus Usyk, says your captain speaking band. Then it is about the next generation. Who will the good young guys be? Dubois, Anderson? There is definitely not a youth movement in heavyweight I can see. Anderson looked quite good last night, to be fair, or night before. Bobby B says biased rubbish. Is he talking about us or is he talking about a comment in the chat? I'm not sure. Hope you're not talking about us, Bobby B, as one of our big no's is bias. Bias out in the seconds out strap line. So fingers crossed. Anita Dump, she's just laughing at something. Or he, as it's a funny name. Beast Mode says, now he knows how Lorena felt when the referee did that BS stoppage versus Dubois after he had dropped him 3 times. Jose Sisyoma says, at least Usyk fights the fights needed. What fight has Tyson Fury taken that was... Who do you think would be a good next opponent for Dubois?
Really, in Daniel Dubois' resume. So I'd be looking at the likes of someone looking for a fight who's very eager. I know I pushed him to replace AJ, replace Dylan White in the AJ fight. Hellenius obviously got that gig, but Joe Parker, I think he's crossed over to BT and fought Joe Joyce. He's looking towards the end of his career. Well, he's won a world title before. Still got life in him. Still got ambition in him. Still a tough fight for anyone. A tough proven fight to. If people want to say, look, this guy has or hasn't got it right now, I think Joe Parker's the real kind of acid test to see where you're at right now. I think that makes for a good fight, I think, to see if Daniel has it in him. Other fights, I don't know, like for Usyk, again, I mentioned only Fury is the one I want to see. No other fight here for me, for Oleksandr Usyk. I just don't think we'll get that fight. But for Dubois, someone like a Joe Parker fits my bill.
Next subject, I want to apologise for our connection getting dropped for a few minutes just now. Obviously, we're back. Otherwise, you wouldn't be even hearing me make the apology. But yeah, it was a fault at our end. Vinny, our mod father, if you like, has just explained it. And hopefully it will not happen again. But yeah, we're back. We're now going to be talking about the big fight this weekend. Thoughts quickly turning from last week to this week. Up in Manchester, big rematch. Liam Smith hoping to repeat the stoppage victory over Chris Eubank Jr. Very conclusive win. I know people talk about how dominant supposedly Eubank was in the first few rounds last time, although I felt they were kind of feeling out sessions, if anything. And then just smashed Eubank in the decisive round. Whether an elbow landed or not, it seemed to only be going one way. Real shocking result. Not that Eubank lost, but that he was stopped. He was known for having an iron chin, much like his legendary father. And first time he'd been even visibly hurt, never mind stopped. So, yeah, it's a very tough hill to climb or mountain to climb for Chris. He's done the right thing, I think, in going out to the States to train. Maybe he could have gone out a bit earlier. Like he was already in the States, but he maybe could have joined his new trainer a bit earlier. He's obviously gone with the trainer of Terence Crawford, Brian Bomac McIntyre, fresh off historic win for Crawford over Errol Spence. Ayman, what do you make of the trainer move, and how much chance do you give of Eubank at least putting on an improved performance in the rematch?
The trainer move is an interesting one, with in the corner with Roy Jones Jr. previously, and Roy Jones, look, respected across the world for his abilities and what he's displayed in the ring. Outside the ring as a coach, still for a lot of people to prove kind of his worth there. So whereas Brian McIntyre, Terence Crawford, look, can't really say too much against the work he's done with Terence Crawford, but again with him as well too. Outside of Terence Crawford, and he's done a good job with Jamel Herring. I remember when he was drafted into the Amir Khan camp, and I didn't really see much of a difference in Amir Khan of previous. Of course, Amir Khan was at the end of his tenure as a fighter, but I didn't see much reflection on what Bomac had put into, or how Bomac had changed Amir Khan in any sort of way heading into his fight with Kell Brook. I would hope that really the significance of a trainer change for Chris Eubank Jr. is someone who's presented as stubborn and not really willing to listen to instruction, wanting to do his thing his own way, which to a degree I do respect, but in a boxing game, which sure, you're the only person in the ring when it comes and the bell rings and your trainer doesn't fight with you. It is a team sport, and you do if you've got someone experienced like a Roy Jones Jr. or others, your dad, Ronnie, Bomac, surely you'd want to listen. Surely you want to affect and have a second set of eyes. I think Chris has always been wanted to kind of do it his own style, go out his own way. I hope that's the difference here, that there is that input from Bomac, and Chris takes it and tries to affect it in the fight. Does he stand a chance? Sure. But a lot for me depends on what Chris has left. And I know there was some controversy surrounding the weight cut he did for the Conor Benn fight and whether that took something out of him. I would tend to believe with my bro science here, but more so from what I know and listen to the UFC side of things. Sure, their weight cuts and things are a lot more dramatic and a lot more dangerous than what we see in the UK or in boxing in general. But I would imagine that would take that out of you having to do that and then not fighting or just doing that in general. Surely that would take something out of your body. And I think that's the question that remains for me, is what's left from Chris after those effects of many years of trying to make that weight, and whether when it comes down to the ring, that's just taken too much out of him. Liam Smith will find the answer out. Liam Smith will come to that conclusion this Saturday night. And a lot of people have already come to the conclusion that Chris Eubank Jr. outside of an IBO world title will never grasp traditional gold. Can he kind of change the thinking for people? That's his perspective. That's what he plans to do. We'll see what happens on Saturday.
Saying that Eubank needs to go back to his previous style, so front foot aggression, high work rate. I mean, it'll be a very entertaining fight if he does, because Liam Smith's not shy about throwing punches either. A lot of all-action exchanges, body shots going in. I would look forward to watching that. Thunder Road says, fight competitive first 3 rounds, but Eubank got rocked in the 4th. Chris needs to fight differently. Smith cutting off the ring with Eubank on the back foot with his hands down again will not be in his favour. Super Sprinter 156. Oh no, they responded something in the chat. More Dubois chat. We'll leave that for now. Yeah, I mean, I was very surprised by the outcome of the first fight. Not because I necessarily thought Chris was going to win, but because I've never seen him so helpless before in the ring or even outside the ring. Just crazy finish, but a brilliant uppercut and followed it up. Good finisher, Liam Smith, and a world-class fighter. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Former world champion, still mixing it in good company. Had a good fight with Jamie Munguia. I think most people agree is world-class. So, yeah, I mean, he'll go into this second fight, I imagine, as the bookie's favourite, which he wasn't going into the first one. Eubank Jr., I think, has moved to a good trainer. Maybe he's left it too late. And there's always been this debate about how much Eubank Jr. listens to the man in his corner. We certainly don't think he listened very much when it was Ronnie Davis, who's still part of the team, I believe. Maybe with someone with the credentials, the reputation, and the personality, forceful personality, and rightly so, of Bomac, maybe he's the one who can finally crack the code and get the best out of Eubank Jr. Or maybe it's too late. Maybe he's past his physical prime now. Maybe he's missed the boat. We will find out next week. And as Ayman alluded to there, Liam Smith is the man to tell us. Chris Eubank is so arrogant, he doesn't even listen to his dad. Says, I wasn't a G until I moved out of the hood. Yeah, that's a fair point. But then if your dad was Chris Eubank Sr., you might have a different perspective on things. We were talking about this the other day. And I've got a bit of a frog in my throat now, so it's appropriate. I did an interview with Eubank Sr at the gym down in Brighton before, and it's still on our YouTube channel, I think, so you should be able to find it. And he just went crazy at me because I coughed a few times during the interview. I had a throat infection at the time. And he said, this is terrible Eubank impression, but I have to say it in something approximating his voice. Do you realise what you've just done? And I said, no idea. And he said, you ballsed up the whole thing. And there might have been some swear words in there as well, but I had no idea what he was talking about. He was like, you keep coughing. I was like, mate, what do you want me to do? Like, I could have took the day off, but then no one would have done the interview. So that's right. I thought I was being a bit of a hero. You know, not all heroes wear capes, rocking up to work with a cough. And it wasn't appreciated by Eubank Sr, to say the least. But yeah, I thought I'd drop that little anecdote in there. But back to the fight. It's hard to predict with any confidence that Eubank Jr can turn things around. Such was the destructive nature of the finish first time around. But it seems like by going to the States, by working with Bomac, and we'll see if he changes his style, but it seems like he's doing all the things people would suggest he does to get revenge. So let's wait and see if he can get it done. Bobby C says, who was that an impression of? I'm really not sure. I'll have to listen to it back.
A couple of things, Danny, quickly. From a Liam Smith perspective, he beat Chris Eubank Jr so resoundingly. Could he maybe have taken his eye off the ball? Could he have maybe started his camp a little bit later? Let's not forget as well the injury that scuppered the fight, the rematch in the first place. From what I'd heard from people within boxing is that type of injury is a real big problem for a fighter looking to continue their career as a back injury. And from back injuries, you can get progressively more problems in the surrounding area. So if they've not taken care of that injury properly, could that surface in the fight as well? Is that something Chris will try and look to target? Obviously not the back, because he can't target. So maybe we do get a rematch. Maybe the Hrgovic fight. Maybe the Hrgovic fight happens. Fury and Usyk drag their feet, and Daniel Dubois gets an opportunity to voluntary defense against Usyk, and we go again. But thanks for tuning in to Seconds Out. We'll keep it tuned in, bringing you fresh content too.